Hello, everybody. So, from what you're seeing on screen, you can probably guess what we're going to be doing today. We are going to rate all the books I've read until mid 2026. So, there's a total of 51 books, but I didn't read them all this year. This picks up right after that last video I did reviewing everything I've read, which was, I think, until September 2025. So some were read in the last months of 2025 and some were read in this year. Storygraph tells me I read 36 books this year. I did not read 51 books in 6 months, okay? That's not what happened here. Although for some, 36 books might still seem like a lot. And to that I say, it is because I spend a lot of my free time reading books. And I squeeze books in where I can. So let's go on to explaining the tiers. At the top tier, we have Diabolical. Can you tell that I've been watching The Boys recently? So Diabolical is meant as a compliment. Just because my taste in books, the ones that I do rate 5 stars, I would affectionately call damaging, emotionally devastating, diabolical. The second tier is Vibes, which is the German mispronunciation of the word vibes. So these are the books that I could roll with. It could be even perfect in every sense of the word. It was just missing that extra oomph for me to push it into diabolical. It could be that it's just not a theme that I connect with in particular. It could be that there are actually flaws. That's why they're not 5 stars, because the flaws are that big. It could just be a good book that I enjoyed. That's it. This is different from the tier below, which is, it's alright. It's just good. It's a standard book. Nothing to complain about, nothing to write home about, but also nothing that particularly captivated me. I just emotionally don't have a reaction to it either which way, either because my brain was turned off while I was reading it, or it's just truly a standard book. I think this is going to be the least populated category, because usually when I don't have an emotional reaction to a book, I put it down, but we'll see. Then we have, wait, what's this about? I just needed one category that accounts for my forgetfulness. And this could be because I actually don't remember the plot, or because I don't remember why I read it, or because the story itself is not memorable, even though I do remember the plot. It's just that book where you're kind of like, this sucks, but I'm not hate reading it, if that makes sense. It's just a bad book that you continue reading for reasons that are unclear to you and to God and everybody else. And finally, we have Respectfully Try Harder. These are the books that I hated. I hated with a burning passion, that are just terrible, and is the reason why I kept reading them. Because I just wanted to watch the train wreck. Or I was in need of getting pissed that day and I needed some kind of outlet. Where better than a bad book, I guess. Right. With all that being said, let's get started. Okay. First we got Hunting Adeline, which is the sequel to Haunting Adeline, which is a book I hated so much. It was such a terrible book. I did post a video about it, reacting to it. It was just bad on all fronts. I could not for the life of me understand why this became a bestseller on book social media. It didn't do anything right, in my opinion. It didn't do the kink right. It didn't do the plot right. It was big cringe and just a female fantasy, which is not even bad to write self-inserts or fantasy, as in sexual fantasy books like that. It's just when it tries to make it seem like it isn't just that pisses me off. So even though I hated Haunting Adeline so much, I still ended up picking the sequel up. And there's a reason for that. At least I deluded myself that this is for research purposes. I actually picked up Hunting Adeline in German. Because I wanted to find out how the Germans translated the smut in the book. Spoiler, it was very, very terrible and cringe. I died. I listened to this. Well, a bit of both. I had the book and then I ended up listening to it, because I just couldn't eyeball read this I felt like I was wasting my time. It was pure torture. I needed to be doing something else. Anyway, I did listen to this in German. The smut was terrible, and the story is insane. The story is worse than the first book, I would say. And because this book, Hunting Adeline, is trying so hard to be more, when I read the author's note and a bit of the discourse online about this book, I felt like I was being gaslit. I thought, did we read the same book? Because from what I understand, people are treating, or the people that like this book treat it like it has something legitimate to say about human trafficking, about sexual trauma, about trauma in general, about mental health. Like it actually has a message. Guys, no. No. This book is so terrible. If this book were honest about its campiness, about what it was trying not to do, that it was just here for a fun time that's a little bit darker, I guess then I would appreciate it more or respect it more. But the fact that this is being handled like it's commenting on human trafficking and all the other things I just said, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. It does not do those themes justice. In fact, I think this book is funny in a camp way. It's so terrible like that. This book is just a mess. And as you can assume, this is going into try harder, please. What is this? I don't know what Carlton was thinking writing this. All right, next book. We have Jasad Heir. Oof. So I picked this one up because it was sold to me on Book Talk, which is not the most reliable place to get a recommendation, but on Book Talk, it's marketed as this true enemies to lovers, and Yo Girl has a sweet spot for that trope. I love it. I don't think I need to explain why I love enemies to lovers. A lot of girls do. But I agree with book social media consensus that a lot of enemies to lovers nowadays aren't really enemies to lovers. Granted, I haven't read that many, but I only needed to read the premise sometimes to be like, Or we could also pull the booktube videos I've watched as sources. They're not really enemies to lovers. Or I guess I don't have enough personal experience with these book talk books to say that they don't do enemies to lovers well. It also has a lot to do with the marketing of it and what people find exciting about it in reviews that leads me to think I'm probably not going to enjoy this. Hence, I don't pick them up. But this one, I wanted to give it a try because it was marketed, as I said, as true enemies to lovers. And I wanted to check whatever true enemies to lovers means. And if this book excites me. It didn't. This is a fantasy that has more of a Egyptian vibe. From what I remember, I couldn't deal with the endless amount of world building in this book, which I understand a lot of fantasy readers enjoy. I do not. I do not find fantasy worlds inherently interesting. I was there for the enemies to lovers, girl. And while I was processing and reading all these world building info dumps, I still could not imagine a distinct atmosphere of these worlds. I think the kingdoms, from what I remember, hardly differ in vibes from each other. They all sounded the same to me, except for the kingdom where the female main character is from and where the male main character is from, which, and I'll pick up on this theme later. The male main character is from a militaristic kingdom that wants to kill the entire magical race of which the FMC is a part of. So they're genocidal, militaristic. Who does that remind you of? Right? This is where I've had the notion that some romanticises have elements of Nazi romance in it. Because, holy shit, if you think about Alchemized, which is originally Draymani fanfiction, and Draco was a Death Eater, which are analogs to Nazis, you can see why I noticed this in some romantasy works, right? This one I would put here. I don't remember a lot from this book. I just remember not liking it. I wanted to read the sequel of this, but I was just so bored by the end of this one that I just watched a video of somebody summarizing it, and it would have been a waste of time if I had picked the sequel of this up. So yeah, do not remember a lot of it, but I do remember it not being a very good, not a very well-paced enemies to lovers. I wasn't buying their connection. If I remember correctly, I thought it was just very light on the romance. It wasn't really building an attachment. It wasn't very good at creating that romantic thrill, which led me to pick up Bodice Rippers because I had this idea that I remember books having romantic thrills. Where did that go? I started going more and more into the past to find out where exactly we lost the plot. But the conclusion to that thought will be when the next Bodice Ripper appears in this list. Okay, next book is Notice. This one I picked up because it was in Kate Elizabeth Russell's Goodreads shelf. And for those of you who don't know, Kate Elizabeth Russell wrote my all-time favorite book, My Dark Vanessa. So this felt like a recommendation from her, and that's why I picked it up. And to be fair, when I opened this book, I understood why it was in her shelf. The writing style reminds me of her. The themes remind me of the kind of themes she likes. So this book is about a teenage prostitute. And it's about all the violence that she has to endure from her clients and from the system and etc. It's a dark book, don't get me wrong. It's very dark. And the lyrical quality of the prose, I love it. There is a distance to this prose, but it's a distance that I enjoyed. So every time something darker or more violent happens to the FMC, she just pulls away from her emotions, and it reminded me a lot of Dissociation. And it's still full of emotion. This is a good example of letting the scene speak for itself. Especially, and I think this only works if the scene or the topic is that dark or that intense. You have to know when, as a writer, you pull back on describing the emotions, and it makes the scene land harder. So that's my praise for this book. But here's the thing. A lot of books that I have encountered that are more sapphic in nature have a certain kind of longing that I cannot relate to. In this particular case, she is longing for a woman who is also her therapist or her social worker. I forget. It's been a couple of months. And for some reason that I do not freaking understand, she just cannot tell this girl that I love you, help me, whatever else. She has a huge blockade inside her about that. And it's insanely frustrating for me to read because it's so many scenes where it's just redundant, that. And I keep on thinking, bro, just open your mouth. Just say what you're feeling. She is literally a therapist. Just tell her. And then the therapist, to be fair, she also isn't reacting to her. And it is an inappropriate relationship because they do end up having sex with each other. But she's also not reacting to no, I actually remember her reaching out to the main character multiple times, trying to coax her out of her shell, and she fails. All that to say that I found the main character, after a certain point, really frustrating, which I would like to make clear again is entirely separate from the violence she endures in this story. Okay, it's just that romance element, you can't call it a romance, this love story element in this book that is just so infuriating for me to read. I do cognitively understand why she has this huge blockade over saying her emotions directly, probably because of trauma and learned helplessness and blah, blah, blah. But it's just annoying to read because I just couldn't relate to it. I'm sure this book has value for a lot of people who can relate to these thoughts, but alas, not for me. So this is why... Oh my god, I can't decide. Where do I put it? Do I put it in Try Harder? It really wasn't that bad. So... I'm putting it in wait, what was this about? Because I do remember the story, but it's more like, wait, why is this about that? I'm putting that there because I can't put it in Try Harder because it's not that bad, as I said. Okay, we have Look Closer by David Ellis. This is a run-of-the-mill thriller, very commercial fiction-y, very squarely in the genre. I do remember listening to this and not paying attention that much. Like, I was obviously listening to it, but not getting that much invested in it. That's the feeling I remember, but I don't actually remember what the story is about, if I'm honest. I forgot the details. I think it's about a guy who meets his ex, his first love and he's super obsessed with her, but he's already married. And then it has like 4 perspective characters or something like that. As you can probably tell from my recollection or the lack thereof, this is going into, wait, what was this about? I just remember the feeling I had after reading it, which was when everything was said and done and all the twists were revealed. I just thought, wow, I couldn't have come up with that even if I had paid attention. There were no plot hints, so it was just twists for the sake of twists. I was so underwhelmed by it. It was boring. It's so standard, but also worse. The next book is Keep Sweet. Now, this is a book about a Mormon girl from the FLDS church, and she's young. She's let it be 14 or 15 or something like that. She is at the cusp of getting married off as one of the many wives of some dude. And I opened this book and I was just immediately hooked by the religious voice of it. Oh, it was so well done. The religious delusion in the dynamics. I wish this book had been more literary. This is a young adult book. And I wished it wasn't only that. I wish it was a literary young adult book. I just wanted to stay within the religious delulu of it all, which this book did, but it's more of a thriller. It's very fast-paced, which worked for the most of the book, but it just didn't stick the landing. I buddy read this with somebody from the server, and we both agreed that at the end, it felt like the author just wanted to be done with this book. They weren't interested in concluding it in a satisfying manner, which is such a shame because I was so hooked. I was so hooked by the theme, by the main character. I loved the main character because there's a certain kind of female main character I enjoy a lot, and it's the kind that, yes, goes through a lot of chaos and trauma and devastating stuff, but who remains resilient and has a particular kind of resilience that I thoroughly enjoy. It's what I like to call the don't let the bastards grind you down resilience, who's just like, well, if all I can do is crawl, then bitch, I'm gonna start crawling. It's that type of resilience that I enjoy so much. It makes me root for a character automatically. And this book had it. But the ending was just not good. So, where am I putting it? I want to put it in diabolical, but really the ending was just that bad that I have to demote it into vibes. It's going into vibes. High vibes, though. If I could just chop off the last third and have somebody else write it, then it would be diabolical. The next book is Tampa by Alyssa Nutting. This is, oh God, a well-known book in the circles of people who enjoy similar books as I do, which is dark fiction. This is about a female pedophile. Oh, the perspective is so well done. So Celeste is a middle school teacher who explicitly became that because of her sexual perversions. And she is just such a piece of work. Oh my God. So well written, such good commentary. Yes, it's a little bit over the top, but it's good. It's good over the top because it's trying to make a point about how we view male victimhood and how beauty is a huge armor against a lot of things, a huge protective factor. And Celeste has no qualms exploiting that to do all the evil things that she likes to do. This book made me think a lot. It made me think a lot about how we let certain types of women get away with a lot of things. And it also reaffirmed my perception of how much we overvalue youth. So I had the same thoughts when I was reading My Dark Vanessa. I'll be honest, I didn't flip the script. I didn't apply the thing to the other gender. So with My Dark Vanessa, I was thinking that young girls, like girls being young, is creepily overvalued. They're like sexualized to high heavens. And that's obviously not good. But this book, Tampa, made me think how, to a lesser extent, the same is done to young boys and young men. So with My Dark Vanessa, yeah, sure, she was, I think, 13 until the ages of 18, or I think she's 30. But what I mean with young people is it includes 18-year-olds, okay? It includes legally adult. It's just they're obviously half kids still. And we do the same thing to a lesser extent, I admit, to young boys too. We sexualize younger people a lot, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that's good. So that book made me think about that. It made me readjust my beliefs. It made me add new thoughts into my belief system, I guess. And for that reason alone, it's going into diabolical. Although I remember that the book didn't connect with me to a full 5-star, in the context of this tier ranking, I would put it in diabolical. Right, the next book is the first book of a series, and I think I'm just going to comment on the entire series as a whole. It's A Fate of Wrath and Flame. And guys, even though I read 4 books in this series, I can hardly remember anything about it. I only remember the premise, which is do you call it isekai kind of thing, where main character is from the modern world and she gets teleported into a fantasy world where vampires are elves and also royalty or something like that. I picked this book up when I was in the middle of my thesis stress and I just didn't want to think. So yes, my brain was turned off the entire time. I just let the story wash over me, and I guess it was fun. I do remember liking the first book for that. So the first book, just to be fair, I'm putting in, it's alright. It works. I don't have strong emotions toward the story. It worked for the intended purpose, which is to turn my brain off and just read something. All the other books I read because I'm a completionist. And I cannot recall. I do recall some characters that I enjoyed, but I don't remember. So I'm putting all the other books in. Wait, what was this about? Oof. Those are 3 books in there. I can already hear the people roasting me and telling me, you don't even read the books. You don't even like the books that you read. You're not a real reader. Well, I guess there is some truth to that, but I don't care. I just sometimes pick up books and forget about them immediately. So what? Oof. The next book, though, is the first bodice ripper I picked up, which is Claiming the Courtesan. I remember liking this book. I did like it because it had more of the romantic thrill that I was talking about. So this is the moment my research started regarding older romance books and if they had the romantic thrill. And I just liked it because it did have the old toxic tropes in it, which is, if you don't know, things like forced seduction. And I knew this was a thing in the past, and I was interested in it because for dark romance, CNC or straight up non-con is an established trope, I guess, but it is still depicted differently than it was in the past. My theory is, despite people being kink positive or sex positive, not judging each other's kinks, I feel like that detracted from the tabooness of it. Because books in the past still had a heavy dose of sexual repression. And my leading theory is what makes old books good is that the authors were sexually repressed. Will I get cancelled for that? Well, and let me specify what I mean by good. By good, I mean it gives you that feeling of being scandalized. I feel like modern dark romance doesn't have that titillating aspect to it, that you're like, oh my god, clutch my pearls, but also looking on and being intrigued, which is exactly that. You're scandalized. And I missed that. So that's why I picked up this book. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. It had like purple as fuck prose. I think this wasn't really published in the 80s, but it maintained the vibe of very purple prose, very toxic male lead. We're just going to ignore the fact that he is assaulting her and they still fall in love in the end. It's that camp thing that, yes, I know is toxic, but it's just part of the subgenre of a bodice ripper. So yeah, I wouldn't put it in vibes because I didn't enjoy it that much. I would say it's alright. Right, the next book is Rose in Chains, and this is the second Draymini fanfiction I picked up, or it's not fanfiction anymore, it got TradPub, they filed the serial numbers off. This is comparatively worse than Alchemized. I have a soft spot in my heart for Alchemized because it had a lot of potential. This didn't even have that. I would say that the author is less skilled than Senlin Yu. Did I enjoy it still? Yes, I did, but I think it didn't do a good job of filing the serial numbers off. This is also true for Alchemized, where I think it's very hard for these writers to conceptualize their story outside of the hive mind knowledge of Draymini. So you still need preliminary knowledge of not Harry Potter, of course Harry Potter, but specifically of the Hermione fandom to be able to follow this emotionally. It relies a lot on that still. So, I would put it in try harder, but like a high try harder. It's not like Hunting Adeline where I was hate reading it, but it's also not forgettable like that. I still had emotional reactions to it because, Hermione has certain tropes and themes that interest me as a reader. They're just not done in a way that I would consider good. But the attempt is there. The vibes are there. I have an appreciation for Hermione tropes, and later on also for another Harry Potter pairing, but I just cannot in good conscience call it a good book. I can't even put it a tier higher, guys. Next, we have Lapvona from Otesha Mosfeg. Mosfeg? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name. This book I'm putting straight into, wait, what was this about? I remember what it's about, but it's such a forgettable story. It's about this town, Lapvona, where a lot of things happen, and the plot has no direction. It's very litfic. It's very, why am I even here reading this? It's just vibes. And I could not even discern the vibe it was going for. Well, the vibe I discerned while reading it is that it's sort of funny. It's like a little silly. Just silly characters doing silly dark things. It's more dark humor. And then I read the reviews and they're like, oh my god, this is so bleak. I'm like, bleak where? What bleakness? That went over my head. I just thought it was kind of funny. Not the most interesting book I've ever read, but yeah. Damn, I swear I liked more books than this. This second to the last tier is filling up. Oh god. Oh, look. Yeah, here we have the next book. Mania by Lionel Shriver. I love this book. Oh, it's so good. So this book is spec-fic satire. It's a story where the government made it illegal to be stupid. But not because they think dumb people shouldn't exist. It's the opposite. They think intelligent people shouldn't exist. There's this movement that goes on through society called the mental parity movement that argues that it's classist or ableist or something ist, intelligist, to insist that you have more intelligence than somebody else. So they want to make that whole concept equal. They want to eliminate the concept of intelligence. Nobody has to take tests anymore. Stupid is now a slur, all that. So while I was reading this, I was thinking, oh my god, this is such an obvious dig at the left, especially social justice movements and the like. But I even put that in my original review. But the more I thought about it, because for reading that and thinking about it, I think this is also a roast to the right of America, which is they're very anti-intellectual. So Lionel Shriver is actually poking fun at both sides, and I thought it was well done. When it comes to social critique, I really dislike being preached at. I don't like it if it's obvious what you're trying to go for. I don't like it when you're trying to perpetuate a political message. I'm one of those people, it might be an unpopular opinion, where I don't think reading is inherently political. It's interpersonal. And then once that interpersonal thing is established, you put the political message on top. If the book is too hardcore on the political commentary before the actual social commentary, I'm gonna DNF. I feel like I'm getting preached at. This one wasn't. It was a little bit slyer about it. I enjoyed it a lot. Not to say that I agree with everything that's in here, but I enjoyed it a lot. It's layered, it's funny, the characters are so interesting, even on an ideological level, how people function under ideologies that are extreme, supporting things you at first don't agree with, and then you slide into it, which can be applied to both sides. I think the book did a good job portraying all of that. It was such a fun read. But most of the time while reading this book, I was just in there getting entertained and following the story's thought process. And for that, it was really fun. So, how high would I rate this? I'm thinking back on the finale, and I think this book stuck the landing. So for me, it's going into diabolical. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Oof. The next book is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is my first Colleen Hoover book, and I was positively surprised when I picked it up. If you've been living under a rock, this book is about domestic violence more than anything else. It's about the progression of a relationship. Or what's the opposite of progression? The decomposition? I think Colleen Hoover has a specific kind of audience. First of all, I was very surprised that this book had anything to say. I was surprised this was a book with a message. I wasn't expecting that for some reason. I thought Colleen Hoover was more of a, trash romance writer, which is all good. I have nothing against those, but I was surprised that this book was actually trying to convey something. So that already added a plus point while I was reading this. And then I actually thought her writing style was charming. People keep on roasting Colleen Hoover for her writing style, but it appeals to a certain kind of audience, which I would assume are millennial women who like contemporary stuff, whether it be romance or thriller, because Colleen Hoover is a little bit of both, I think. She has a particular taste in stories, which is good for her because that's like branding. Because she has her personal brand, she's found her authorial voice. Can I fault her for it? No, I can't. Did I hate this book? Honestly, I didn't. I didn't love this book, but I was positively surprised by it. So it's going into... It's all right. It's all good. I can work with it. I don't agree with the haters that much. I think people are too mean to her. This book is not romanticizing domestic abuse, guys. It's quite literally commenting on it. I don't understand why people would ever think that unless there is not a lot of media literacy involved. Right. Next, we have The Hills of Shivers and Shadows, which I did a 2-hour video on. Girl, I summarized the entire plot and, oh God, where do I put this? I had a lot of fun summarizing this book. I had a lot of fun roasting it. It is indeed a hate read, so it goes into try harder. So this book is about a girl, Frankie, who gets kidnapped, so it is a dark romance, and transported into the Alaskan wilderness in a freaking billion-dollar self-sufficient log cabin estate somewhere. And it comes with 4 hot men, and it's about all of them wanting her and wanting to bone her. Yeah. I thought this book was fun. I thought it was too long, but it was still fun because it was absurd. It's not very well written, but if you want to read something unhinged in the most campy way, unintentionally campy way, I think, then this book does the job. I did a 2-hour video on this. I really don't have a lot more to say. It's fun as a hate read or just as a what the fuck's going on read, I guess. Then I picked up Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. I can't see the name of the author there. I thought this book was cute. So this was in the stage where I was really overwhelmed with my thesis and I was purposefully picking up books that didn't have a lot of substance to them. Where I didn't have to turn my brain on and I was just fishing around looking for light literature. And so I picked this one up and I thought it was fine. It did the job. I thought it was sweet in the awkward way that Colleen Hoover writes her books. It was sweet. It was sweet and clumsy, and I guess it worked. It has magical realism. It's about this teen couple that wakes up without their memories. And it's Groundhog Day-esque. So every 3 days it resets and they forget everything again. So it's about them organizing their memories and trying to figure out who they are and who they are to each other. And it's cute. I thought it was cute. It was wholesome. In the most awkward Wattpad way, I thought it was wholesome. As such, really, it's going into so right. I might have a thing for Colleen Hoover books. Okay, the next book I read is An Unacceptable Offer, which is a historical romance, a Regency era. It's a slim book, if I remember correctly. And I'm putting that straight to Sol Right. It's about a spinster. Was she 25 or something? So it's about an older, she's not really that old, but for the time, older unmarried girl who is in her, 5th season. and looking for a husband. And then it's about this guy whose wife just died and now he's returning back to London to be part of the season and pick his next wife. And he's very decided that he wants a wife that is vernünftig, what's that? Reasonable, has a good head on her shoulders, not too whimsical, because he already has 2 kids. So he doesn't want any frivolity or whatsoever. And that's where the female main character fits perfectly. You know, she enjoys being with kids. She's not very frivolous. And it's about that. It's cute. What impressed me in particular about this is that I didn't expect to be titillated by kissing only. There is no sex scene in this book. I remember being pissed about that because I was thinking, you made me read all that just to end on a kiss? What? Because there was a lot of sexual tension. And I thought it was so fascinating how sexual tension can be created that way. There's not a lot of mention of horny thoughts in this, guys. But it still had that tension. Like, let me be clear. It wasn't romantic. It was sexual tension. So I was waiting for the payoff, the climax, haha, if you will, and it never came, haha, again. And I was just so disappointed. So yeah, it's a very titillating novel. So it did its job. It was fun. Next, we have another Hoover book. It Starts With Us. I remember not liking this. I remember thinking it was dull. I don't even want to tell you guys what it's about because I think it ties into what happens at the end of It Ends With Us. So, yeah. I will put that in... Wait, what was this about? And not because I don't remember the plot, but mostly because I was confused as to why Hoover didn't address the thing that I feel like a lot of readers came for, which is the relationship between the main pairing from book 1. That's all I'm going to say. Oh, I just realized. Oh my god, I could actually change this. Are you kidding me? Okay, so I think you guys can see better now. So I think you guys can see the cover better now. I'm so sorry. I'm new to this. But yeah. The next book is Judith MacNaugh's Whitney, My Love. I found this book in a Bodice Ripper reading list on Goodreads. And I think this is one of the most popular ones. Is this historical romance or Bodice Ripper? I don't know. I still don't know what exactly differentiates the two. But this is a very long book. The thing is, I had fun with it. I had fun with it for reasons outside of the story as well as reasons within the story. This story meanders quite a bit, but it's fun. Trust me. It's fun. It's silly. It has the typical romantic titillation in there. The silly little, frivolous little conflicts in there. Until... it reaches the point where I was very, very happy to not be living in the Regency era and to be very much alive in the feminism era, just because of how Whitney was treated. It's very toxic. I expected this. I found it in a Bodice Ripper reading list. I expect the leading man to be toxic, but I didn't expect to be this worried about Whitney because I did end up caring about her throughout the book. I didn't even tell you guys what this is about. It's about Whitney, who is a former weird girl turned into social butterfly and ends up attracting all the people in Paris, I think. All the eligible bachelors in Paris want her. And she attracts one particular guy, the Duke of Claymore, and he is a rake. And he's had affairs left, right, and center, but now he wants to marry. He wants to marry Whitney because she is an independent, free-spirited girl. You guys know the drill. It's very classic romance coded. And I realized that even writing something that is so cliche requires skill to get you hooked. Because despite it being so cliche, I was invested in this story. As such, I can only put it in vibes. It was vibes. I had so much fun. Fun including I was pissed at it. But it was good. I enjoyed it. Next we have Still by Thomas Raab, I think. This is a German book. Every so often I make forays into German literature just to check things out. I like to read wide. So this book actually was in my shelf for 10 years and I never finished it. I remember buying this because I wanted to practice my German again. And I was just so annoyed with how the sentences were made. I can't explain it too well here because then I would have to explain German grammar. And girl, safe to say, it has a specific kind of voice. It has a specific kind of cadence and sentence structure that was just so annoying. This is also quite blatantly a ripoff of Süskind's Das Parfum, because the main character of this novel is somebody with a supernatural ability to hear. And he's also secretly a genius, as the Germans like to write about. And it's about him coming to terms with society and how terrible it is. So it has your standard dose of German misanthropy. And it even has that thing where the women do not make any emotional or logical sense. They are just a plot device. You can tell by my tone of voice, I freaking hated this book. I disliked it so much. It reminded me why I do not pick German literature up. At least the one that is more litfic. Because it's always some shit like this. It's always about some genius and misunderstood and misanthrope and he's in love with this one girl who for some reason also loves him back and we do not understand why. I hate it. I'm going to end my rant here because realistically you guys can't pick this up because I think it was never translated. But just trust me when I say it was shit. Right. The next book is You by Caroline Kepnes. I read Loner a while back, and since I watched the first 2 seasons of You, I thought Loner reminded me of You. So I wanted to pick up the book after somebody in the server said that the book is not comparable to the series. And I agree with them. So if you don't know what You is about, it's about Joe Goldberg who falls in love with Beck, or falls in love is in heavy quotation marks, but he falls in love with Beck and he is determined to be her boyfriend. So he orchestrates all these things around her so that she will end up falling in love with him, I guess. But he's also a murderer and a psychopath and all that. I will say that the book is a lot raunchier, it's a lot darker, and in my opinion, more fun than the show. The show has this daytime TV vibe about it that I don't particularly enjoy. Joe in the book is a misogynist through and through, but in a twisted sense, he also thinks he's the ultimate boyfriend, the ultimate nice guy. But you can sense the way he's talking about Beck, he doesn't really view her as a person. He views her as an instrument, as something to fulfill his desires with. He doesn't really care what Beck wants. And that is done so much better and so much funnier in the book. I can only recommend that you read the book. So to me, You, the book, is vibes. It's also very interesting to me because You is more commercial. It's a commercial thriller, whereas Loner is a literary thriller. And I could compare the two as to why one reads more literary to me and one more commercial. I do not have any final conclusions regarding this. I am still mystified what makes a book literary and what makes a book commercial. At least, if it's not blatantly commercial, like, I don't know, Jasad Heir is for me very commercial fantasy. And You is a little bit closer to literary, but not quite. And that fascinates me, this Übergang, what's that? Oh my God, I've been speaking too much German now. I'm forgetting English words. The transition between literary to contemporary, literary to commercial, the books that are just close to that border fascinate me. Like, at what point does it become literary? Speaking of which, the next book is literary. It's The Dream Hotel by, I'm not even going to pronounce the author's name, but this is a literary science fiction book about a world in which it's kind of like Minority Report. So it's a world in which people get not arrested, but held because they have a high risk score. And these risk scores are determined by their dreams. Among other things, it's determined by some mysterious algorithm. And so our main character does end up in one such prison, in one such jail. And it's a commentary also about the for-profit jailing system in the US. And it's very interesting. It's a slow book. So you don't be expecting the crash boom bang of Minority Report in this one. You're not going to get it. It's a literary book. It's a lot of reflecting. And it's very interesting thoughts, in my opinion. It's a little bit Black Mirror coded, but the slower Black Mirror episodes. So I'm a huge fan of Black Mirror, at least the early seasons, and I enjoyed this book. Alas, I didn't think it was that stellar. I think this won a prize. Good for the author, but I don't get why. It wasn't that moving to me, and the concept wasn't that original, so I don't know why. It's just an all right book for me. The next book is another bodice ripper, which is Loving a Lost Lord by Mary Jo Putney. This one is about a guy who loses all his memory because of a shipwreck, and a girl finds him and she convinces him that she's his wife, and he rolls with it because he thinks she's hot. That is the basic premise. It's not the best bodice ripper I've read. I didn't get that titillated by it, at least in a romantic sense. The male main character is Indian. I can't determine if the author did that justice. I just thought I should say that. I'm thinking where I should put it. I'm gonna put it in, wait, what was this about? Not because I don't remember the plot again, but because it is not good enough to be in Soul Right, so I have to put it in there. All right. Ooh, the next book is Commandant's Girl by Pam Yenov. This is a more tame cover of the book. The one I have a physical copy of this, has the swastika front and center. So this is a Nazi romance. So I mentioned in previous books that I feel like a lot of romantasy have this concept in them, just changed a little bit. But in the end, it is about convincing a bigoted guy to love you. Or not convincing, because that would mean they're actively trying. It's more that the girl is that special that they could convert a Nazi. So I was seeing this theme, or I was seeing echoes of this in a lot of romantasies. I thought I should just go straight to the source material because this is a niche, which really, are we surprised? The internet is a thing. Romance girlies are crazy. So I read this. I also picked up For Such a Time, which is also a Nazi romance book, but it pissed me off so much that I had to put it back down again. I think I didn't last one chapter before I had to put it down because it was pissing me off with how insensitive it was dealing with the obvious freaking horrible subject matter. Wait, I forgot to mention that it's not Nazi romance. It is explicitly Nazi and Jew romance. So guys, people are insane. But this book did a better job at that. I'm not the authority on this, but I didn't feel particularly offended by the way it was portrayed. It was pretty clear that the Jewish female main character ended up in that situation because of the war and the circumstances, and she had no choice but to do this. But here's the thing. I wish, like, it got the tone somewhat right, but I wished it delved into more the complicated feelings that arise from having to romance your Nazi boss as a Jewish person in disguise. I feel like it shied away from it. It was too scared to explore that, which I understand. Some things, are not yours to explore, because I'm assuming Pam Yenov is not a Jewish woman here. So it fell short in that regard. The female main character was too Disney Channel. Like, I think the story was trying very hard to portray this Jewish female main character as such a good person because of the story it was trying to tell. Wait, so obviously the subject matter is very suspect and offensive if handled incorrectly. I don't know if you can ever handle this correctly, to be honest, but I'm trying to give this book the benefit of the doubt. So because the subject matter is very sensitive and potentially offensive, I think that there was no other option for this story than to make the Jewish female main character as good as one can possibly be. Good and naive, and her alleged flaws are not really flaws. Otherwise, the story could tip over into "what are you doing" territory, right? As for the Commandant I thought was interesting, but not fully fleshed out. There's this whole thing in history where ex-Nazis used this excuse of, oh, I was just following orders and I'm really not that evil and all that. And that I feel like can be explored in a literary way that would have been interesting. That is more about the morality and the evilness that is within all of us and yada, yada, yada. I mean, I went to German school. We studied this stuff. But I was expecting an exploration of those themes, and it just never came. The story was too shy, too scared to actually explore it. So it fell flat, in my opinion. So it wasn't as much a hate read as I thought it would be. But I want to put it in try harder. Because that is the sentiment I have with this book. It's try harder. If you're going to write something this cancelable, you might as well do it with your chest. You might as well actually explore the themes that you're thinking to explore and not half-ass it. The book conceptually is already cancelable, in my opinion. So if you already chose this theme, do it justice. Right, the next book is Devil in Velvet. This is a slim little book, a slim little romance book that I wanted to give a try. I don't know if you guys ever encountered this type of book, but it's the one that you get for, I don't know, €1 somewhere, that is like a one-sitting read, light entertainment sort of pocketbook romance. And I thought this did the job right. I actually really enjoyed it. One thing I didn't expect, because this is about a girl, it's like a second chance romance, I guess. It's about a girl who moves into the south of France with, was it her niece? For a holiday only. They bought a house. And it turns out that the previous owner of that house is her ex. Wait, let me explain that. She used to have a relationship with the guy whomst she bought the house from. A French guy, which is already a red flag in my opinion, but a French guy. And in the past, while they were having this affair, it turned out that he was married, and she was so horrified and offended and crazy angry about it that she broke the entire thing off. And they meet again after she bought this house. So that's the premise of the romance. And it did a surprisingly good job at portraying freaking French rudeness. It's a good depiction of the French. In fact, I'm keeping this book around just in case I want to write about French people in the future. It did a good job. I will say though, however, the prose in this book is, even for bodice ripper standards, so freaking purple and so over the top. I think one sentence was, I adjusted my legs to conceal the brevity of my shorts. The brevity of your shorts? Who says that? Of course, it has also things that are, of its time, which is a lot of fat shaming and all that. But, it's not really something I can really criticize because it is a book from the 70s or 80s. So what am I going to do about it? Right, the next book is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I don't think I even have to explain what this book is about. The title says it all, Half His Age. It's about a 17 going on 18-year-old starting an affair with her English teacher. It's always the English teacher. I thought the book was good. I thought it was heavy on the social media speak. First of all, it's nothing like My Dark Vanessa. It's funnier, more satirical. I think the main character's name is Waldo. I thought Waldo was well written, but not impressively well written like Celeste is from Tampa. I feel like the author put a lot of herself in this character, not to say that she went through the exact same thing. I don't even know if this is actually the author's voice, internal voice. It just reads like somebody is trauma dumping on the page, which is not a bad thing because this book turned out to be entertaining. It's smaller in scale. It's funnier. It's not a classic depiction of that student-teacher dynamic because Waldo is not the classic victim. She does read very mature for her age, and it just criticizes exactly that excuse that older men use to abuse younger girls, because it doesn't matter how mature you think she is. My guy, she is still 17 or 18 and you are 40. Please. Okay, I do not want to get on that soapbox right now. Safe to say, I thought this was fun. I loved the ending. I loved the character analysis. But alas, I can't put it in diabolical because I didn't like it that much. It was just a fun read, thinking back. I wasn't that hooked. I was entertained. So, it's vibes. Right, I'm going to take a short break. Maybe you guys won't even notice, but I need to drink some water. Okay, I'm back. I've got, can y'all hear that? A tumbler of a cold beverage to help me in the final stretch of this tier ranking. The next book is The Savior's Army by Jenna Moreci. Okay, so I've watched a lot of videos from Jenna Moreci, especially when I was very new to writing. I'm still new to writing, mind you, but when I was a bloody noob and had no idea about anything and I wanted to actually learn the craft instead of writing here and there with no idea what I was doing. And for that purposes, I thought her videos were fine. They're very beginner friendly. Like a lot of people say she doesn't follow her own advice. I don't think that's true. I think that even advice can be interpretable. So I'm sure she feels like she stands behind what she's recommending. And me in the audience just registered things differently than she did. What I'm trying to say is, while her videos were helpful, I don't think this book was good. I don't think this entire series was good. Some people go overboard hating this series. I don't even have that much emotion toward it. I just thought it was meh. God, I remember reading the first book and thinking like, maybe fantasy is just not my genre. And honestly, that's still my impression right now. I like reading wide, and since fantasy is having its moment under the sun, there are a couple of fantasy books here. But if that wasn't the most popular genre nowadays, I don't think I would pick up a fantasy book, or at least not one that's more epic and more for a bigger audience, I guess. But yeah, my opinion of The Savior's Army, which is the third installment of this book, is... wait, what was this about? I think that's the entire series. I did not turn my brain on while reading this entire thing. I was not invested at all. I didn't care about anybody. But in particular, this third installment, if you read the title, The Savior's Army... Wait, let me provide some context for people who are not chronically online, or at least not part of AuthorTube. Jenna Moreci's Savior series is about a realm called Courtesan that has a magical queen that blesses the realm so that, I don't know, the soil becomes more fertile. Is that the word? And when she comes of age, they have a tournament that's reminiscent of The Bachelor, where they fight to the death. They don't really fight to the death in tournament, but the concept is that they fight to the death and the winner marries the savior or some shit. And it has this very shallow commentary on the patriarchy and all that. Is not very good. It is a very middle grade. The messaging is very middle grade. Despite all the gore, this book reads like it's for a younger audience. It is not even new adult. I think it's in YA, but with gore. There is something about the tone that is very inconsistent in this book. So the main pairing is Tobias and Layla. Layla is the savior. And things happen. They escape the capital and they're on the run. So if you think about the title, The Savior's Army, what promises do you think it makes? To me, I thought The Savior's Army was going to be about Layla recruiting people to her cause, gathering forces, etc., etc. The fantasy things that I assume are typical. Alas, this book is a travel book. And even though it's a travel book, I still don't get a good feeling of how the realms look like. Like, it's a bad travel book. I already don't enjoy travel books in fantasy series. I've only read another one, which was the second installment or the third of this series here. If you look on screen, the first romantasy series I was reading, I was already not a fan of the travel book there because it just felt so pointless. I guess some people enjoy this. Fantasy readers enjoy a journey. I do not. So when this book turned out to be that, I was already like, ugh, oh my god, it's gonna be one of those books. But even then, like, the writing is just so bad. It's just so unskilled, in my opinion. I'm not a plot-brained reader, okay? So don't ask me about the plot holes and things that don't make sense. I am more of a character-driven reader, so I was looking for the complications within Tobias's and Layla's relationship, and the complications are just so shallow. I think Moreci didn't want to introduce any conflict in their relationship. I feel like Layla should struggle more with the fact that she's a religious icon and what responsibility that puts on her. But no, she doesn't. I feel like Tobias should struggle with the fact that he's fallen in love with the savior, but also it's kind of fucking up his life. No, he's still very deeply in love. And don't even get me started on the smut scenes in this book. I feel like this series did not need explicit sex scenes, but Moresi was moved to do them for some reason, and I was cringing throughout. It was terrible. It felt like I was reading two kids having sex, and I kept on wondering, why am I in the room with them? I do not want to be reading this. In the book, canonically, they're not kids, but they read like kids. I don't care what the book says. It was so terrible to witness. I had to dissociate a little while reading that. The sex scenes have this aspirational quality to them. In my review, I called it Disney Channel sex, and hear me out. It's because the sex seems like what somebody would imagine good sex is, who has no idea how sexual attraction works. Like, they know how the mechanics work of the act, but they don't know how attraction works. It reads so odd, guys. I almost want you guys to read it just so you can see how odd the sex scenes read. I was just so uncomfortable while reading it. Anyway, I put it in wait, what was this about? Because I think the entire series is just so forgettable. The next book is The Princess and the Pagan by Julia Fitzgerald. So this is another bodice ripper, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. The first third was marvelous. It had everything you want in a bodice ripper, which is... Okay, wait. Let me explain the premise first. So the premise is that this girl, Flavia, I think, is betrothed to a prince from Turkey, Prince Zebukar, I think. I can't believe I remember these names. I don't know if they're right, but yeah, so she's betrothed to him ever since childhood. And she's in love with this guy despite never having met him. Flavia is supposed to be naive as hell, as bodice rippers, FMCs are. Naive, but also headstrong. Eventually, she gets sent over to Greece that is occupied by Turkey, and she meets this prince. And he's super charming and over the top and spoils her with all the luxuries. But the people in his court are treating Flavia with pity. They're scared of Prince Zebukar. Something is amiss. And Flavia cannot put two and two together, but you, the reader, can. And it's so fun because the tension is done so well in this first third. And you can't wait for things to blow up. So you get all the things that Bodice Ripper promises, which is, questionable romance building, questionable consent, questionable everything. The campy thing that, Bodice Rippers have. So it was doing that really well. I was entertained and hooked. And then it throws that all away. And just goes completely off course. And it becomes more historical than it is Bodice Ripper. For a few chapters I was still hooked, and then I realized, wait, what even is the story about? Until my final impression was, I think this might be sneaky Christian propaganda, because at some point what's being portrayed, so the pagan is not a Turkish person, the pagan is a Greek rebel leader, and as the story progressed it becomes more and more clear that the main denominator between good and evil is their religion. So all the evil people are Muslim and all the good people are Christian. And that made me think, is this sneaky Christian propaganda? I don't have a final conclusion to that, but the suspicion is there. All that to say that this book it was just so disappointing. I cannot put it with wait, what was this about? Because I feel like it is worse than that. I think it is a try harder. I just wished it stuck with the first third, or at least worked with it more, because when I tell you that the conflict that is set up in the first third gets completely abandoned, I mean it. That is not what this book is about, and it's annoying. Then I picked up a noir book, 5 Decembers by James Kestrel. This book was fun to a certain degree, because I feel like noirs are vibe twins to Bodice Rippers. They're also campy. This one I found during my many forays into BookTube, and it was recommended sort of offhandedly as really good, a sleeper hit, if you will. So I picked it up, and it's about this guy in Hawaii shortly before World War II. He's a detective and is investigating a brutal murder that occurred, and they're trying to identify the bodies, and there's this whole conspiracy theory behind it, yada yada. And then World War II breaks out, and he's not in the States anymore. He's somewhere in Asia. And that's where the summary ends. That's just the premise. It's a detective around World War II. And I thought, oof, camp. I thought the voice had that lovely noir quality to it, where there's a lot of emotional repression. There's like such a distance. Just imagine your typical noir detective. It's exactly that. And it was done well. Especially like, and I was expecting in the war segment to really land, to really create an atmosphere of like, I don't want to think about my feelings atmosphere, but you can read that the feeling is there. Let me tell you, there is not a lot of excavating any emotion in this prose, and it does that well. It has that very noir voice, as I said. So this book is trying to genre blend. You've got the typical noir, and it's trying to do war fiction. And ever since I read Alchemized, I have developed an interest in war fiction, especially World War II fiction. And so I thought this book was perfect. But as I said, it's blending two genres. It's blending the noir and the World War II historical fiction. And I don't think it did it well. When the story moves from noir to World War II, the World War II segment suffers because of the noir element. And when it goes back to the noir element after the war, that suffers from the World War II segment. So I don't think it balanced it well. I recognize the skill behind this, but there was just something amiss. It didn't deliver on both genres. And I wasn't satisfied after reading it. If you're new to more emotional storytelling, let's say, I think this book is a good introduction to it. But if you're used to writers who do this well, even with the emotional repression in the character, I think this book will be disappointing. If you're here for the noir and the mystery of it all, I wasn't hooked by it, to be honest. I was really more there because I wanted to live in the head of somebody who does not overthink. So I can't put it in, wait, what was this about? Because there is skill involved. So I'm going to put it in, it's all right. It's all right. Moving on to the next book, which is Bad Fruit by Ella King. And that is going into diabolical. Oh my God. I've been looking for a book that was thematically about a toxic mother. A really bad mother, and Bad Fruit does this so well. This is a literary thriller. It's for sure a thriller because the scenes are tense, and they're tense without even high stakes. It's just this one woman who is controlling an entire family using nothing else but psychology, and it's fascinating. I was so angry reading this, but the book does a good job of portraying what it's like to live with somebody who's like this. And of course, you can imagine it's terrible. It does a good job of showcasing the different dynamics within this family. It was so interesting. I was so hooked. And what catapulted it for me from vibes to diabolical is the ending. I love the ending. I'm not even going to comment too much about it, but I like these type of endings where I agree with what happened. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Pick it up. It's so fun. The next book is Deathless from Valente, Catherine M. Valente. And I love Valente. I love her voice. She has a very distinct surrealist voice. I first read Comfort Me with Apples and I loved it. Some people hated the twist. I loved the twist. For me, I think what makes a good plot twist is, sure, it has to make sense, but also it has to have good vibes. And that book had it. This book, Deathless, is a fairy tale. It's inspired by a Russian fairy tale, Koshchei the Deathless, and Maria Morevna, if I remember correctly. I thought it was interesting because I'm not Russian. I didn't know of this fairy tale, so it was fun. It's also this fairy tale set in communist Russia, which was even more entertaining. Valente does a good job of maintaining this fairy tale-like atmosphere, but it's for adults. This is an example of the author being very aware of their tone, unlike The Savior's Army, for example. If I were to describe it, it has commentary in there that only adults would be able to understand and chuckle about. Anyway, Impeccable vibes. I loved it so much. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I would put it in diabolical. I would think it's good. It's good. The toxic marriage dynamic in between is also super interesting. It doesn't make a lot of sense. That's the thing with Valente books. Be prepared not to understand everything that's going on, but the vibes are strong. And I admire her for that. I love Valente. Yeah, so that's going into diabolical. Next book is The Poet Empress. This was recommended to me by a friend. And they said that this could be something up my alley because there's a little bit of darkness in there. And I would say for the most part, they were right when it comes to the premise. So The Poet Empress is fantasy, and it's about this girl, what's her name? Wei? Who's from a poor farming village in, I assume, China. I don't know if it's actually called China, but it's Chinese culture inspired. So she's from this poor village. They're all starving to death. It's just a bad time there. And then one of the crown princes arrives and declares that his older brother is looking for concubines. When I heard that, I was just like, oh my fucking god, is this a bodice ripper? Because that plot is bodice ripper the house. It's not, but Wei volunteers to be a concubine, and from then on she discovers the court and blah blah blah. The magic system, that's where the title comes from, is that writing and reading is not a neutral trait. There's magic attached to it, and that magic is produced through poetry. That's all I'm going to explain. It was all right. That's where I'm putting it, and I'll explain why. It was fine. It had, it had me for a bit there. I thought it was interesting. It's just the way the characters are made and where the plot went. I was just so disappointed. I did like the final battle scene. I will say that. But in general, the characters, they don't feel real. And this is a problem I have with a lot of fantasy. The characters are so tropey, even if the author invested more thought. Somehow there is just not enough thought invested to make me believe they're actual people. It still, to me, reads like a play. That is the level of reality I imagine fantasy books. They're a stage play. Does that make sense? There are different levels of reality. One where it's very intimate and it's like you're talking to a friend, like I would say with half his age. And then there's Poet Empress, where it's almost like an opera or a drama, the way it's playing out. So I can understand why that's fun, but personally for me, I enjoy stories more that feel like I'm peeking inside the head of a character. So as mentioned, half his age, Notice, Tampa, all that. So it's lacking that realism for me. So that's why it's all right. It's fine. I had fun, but it's not my favorite book. I just wish there was more meat. And then the ending also was kind of weird and pissed me off. But I'm planning a video with Ezra where we discuss this book together, so stay tuned for that. The next book is 100% Match. I can't see the author's name. Something the third. And this is a very tiny splatterpunk book. I wanted to give splatterpunk a try. And this is pretty disgusting. It's about this guy who's a fast food worker who's looking for 100% match. And the tone of this story is funny. It's that tone that I can only associate with horror. It's funny, disgusting. Did I like it? I mean, I would say it's all right. I mean, high's all right. It's just not quite vibes because it's not my alley. This book made me discover that splatterpunk is kind of silly to me. Like, what's the point? It's kind of trash. It's kind of trash in the way, I don't know, Haunting Adeline is trash. It's not meant to say anything, although I think it's better than Hunting Adeline and Haunting Adeline because it knows it's not trying to say anything. It's just being disgusting for disgusting's sake, and that's fine. People can do that and enjoy that, and it's a genre for a reason. It's just not my genre. Was I grossed out reading this? Yeah, maybe for the first, 10-15 pages, and then afterwards I just got desensitized. Okay, the next book is The Starving Saints. And oh my god, I wanted to love this book. Really, I really did, and I was hooked for a lot of it. I wanted it to be literary horror because that cover looks like literary horror to me, but it's not. I don't even know what it is. Is it fantasy or what? It's siege horror. It's about a castle under siege and then they end up eating each other. This is not a spoiler. It's literally in the tagline. So it's a cannibalism book. And I thought, wow, this would be so interesting. The closed setting, the psychological tension of it all, and then you add some fantasy elements to it. As a concept, I thought it was interesting, and it had me for a bit because I thought the author was gonna go somewhere with it, but it didn't go anywhere. I was just confused by the end. I don't know if the author was trying to do an absurdist ending, but I think even absurdist endings are not this absurd. It's consistent with the vibe of the story, and you can infer as a reader what it's about, or at least the story throughout is absurd. And then of course the grand absurd finale is the absurdest of them all. I'm just thinking about Beautiful You by Chuck, I don't know how to pronounce him, the guy who wrote Fight Club. I'm just thinking about that as an example. This is not it. I was heartbroken because I really liked Sir Voyne. Because it's the first iteration of a muscle mommy lady knight I've ever read, and I liked it. I liked how seamlessly she integrated into this fantasy world that I was buying that she was a knight, if that makes sense. So I rated this higher, but I'm going to put it in try harder because I was just so disappointed by the ending. I was just, I wished it was something else. I wished it tried harder. The next book is Kaal, God of Destruction. This book was so random. It's not a big book at all, but it was suggested on the server as a harem romance, which is apparently a niche of romance that men flock toward. And I am a nosy person. I want to know why men be reading this shit. So I picked this up after it was suggested. Also in part because I was still on my Kindle Unlimited trial period. So Kaal, God of Destruction, allegedly has a plot, but I don't think it matters. It's about the god of destruction taking on a mortal form and collecting his harem as he travels across the land. This book is so offensive. Look, I'm egalitarian at heart, okay? So if I say, let the women goon, sure, the men can goon too, I guess. This book was not written with women reading it in mind at all. It was not written with women in mind at all. It is offensive and questionable, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics involved here, and it's fascinating to read because of that. It's light entertainment for me. I'm not taking this book too seriously, but it's dumb. It's so dumb. Dumb but fun. So I'm putting that into try harder. It was worth the read for research, and it's very nerdy, even though it's trying not to be, but it is. Oh, the next two books, in quotation mark books, are fan fiction. I've been reading a lot of trad-pubbed Dramini fan fiction, so I might as well read true Dramini fan fiction. And I lied. This is not Dramini fan fiction. I perused a lot of Dramini fanfic. Nothing spoke to me. They were too long and not interesting. So one of my friends told me you should try Tomaini. These fanfictions are actually good. The vibe of Tomaini is a lot more dark academia. There's a lot more two nerdy people, one who's into the darker side of intellectualism and one who is in the good side of intellectualism. They're battling each other, and Hermione in this case can't help but be attracted or lured into the darkness TM because Tom Riddle is just that brilliant of a wizard. That's the vibe, okay? At least in romantic idealism, and this fanfic does it so well. Like, it scratches that particular itch that I think a lot can relate to, that itch of I can fix him or her. And it's because Tom has not committed the war crimes Lord Voldemort is going to commit yet. So he's in that sweet spot of being fixable. And it's just watching Hermione trying to fix him, at least in romantic idealism. I think this fic is super well done. I'm not sure I agree with the ending, but the romantic tension is so good. I was desperate for these two to, I don't know, kiss. Is Tomaini my ship? I don't fucking know. But I will say that this one is vibes. It's a vibes. It's a good fic. I would recommend it. I think it's a really old one. It was posted in fanfic.net. And the next one is Playing Cupid by the same author. And this one, I forgot what it's about. I think it's Regency era, Hermione. It's a silly little read. It's still fun, but it's an alternate universe sort of thing. And I just read it because it was short. Don't get me wrong, it was good. You know what? I'm going to put it in Soul Right. Low Soul Right. Because it was still good. It's just, it didn't stick with me as much as Romantic Idealism did. Romantic Idealism, I think I'm going to reread just as an inspiration how to create chemistry like that. It was really good. The next book is My Absolute Darling by Gabriel Talent. And that's going straight to Try Harder. I freaking hated this book. Oh my god. Because, like, look at the title, My Absolute Darling. And I read the blurb, and the theme, or how people react to it, was that it was so dark and terrible. And somehow through the reviews, without spoiling myself, I could read that it was about an abusive relationship between a father and a daughter. And I thought, wow, that's up my alley. Well, it's the type of literary fiction that made me think literary fiction is boring. Because he spent so much time describing freaking bushes, just the flora and fauna of wherever they are. It was so boring. The dialogue was so clunky between the characters. You know what it reads like? It reads like the author is talking to himself, bouncing off ideas, philosophical ideas, and not caring if it's interesting for us to read. It feels like a monologue, even though there's two characters talking. Like, nobody gives a shit. You didn't set up for us to give a shit. You just had a thought, a little philosophical thought, and then wrote pages upon pages of these meandering freaking passages. Oh my god, it was so annoying. So I picked this up as a physical book first, and then I switched over to audiobook, and then I cranked it up to 2 times speed. And then later to 2.5, because that's just how long-winded this shit is. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, the thing that drew me into this book, which is the toxic dynamic between Turtle and Martin. So Martin being the dad and Turtle being the daughter. And sure, the beginning was disturbing. It feels to me it's put there for shock factor. Not like in 100% match, but it was not very interested in exploring that. It's just there, and we're just supposed to buy it. And sure, there are, you know, more darker, more explicit scenes. But for the life of me, it could have done it better. It was not interested in exploring that theme at all. I do not know what this book was trying to say because it's such a meandering freaking disappointment. I am personally offended by this book and how bad it is. You know, while I was reading it, I was picking up the vibe of like American classics. Granted, I never read Hemingway or whatever, but it read like it wanted to be Hemingway, and it was so annoying. It had that same tone. It just, it was so boring, and I was offended how boring it was. And don't even get me started on that ending. The main character, Turtle, who is, I think, a 14-year-old girl, just reads like she was written by a man. Not in a simplistic, sexualized way. It's just, you can tell that the person who wrote this is trying to relate to this experience, but from a very masculine perspective, because Turtle gets repeatedly sexually assaulted by her dad, right? And there are certain ways that people process being assaulted, which is you put the blame on yourself, you feel dirty. These are the classical responses. But instead, Turtle, what she experiences is that she feels like she's useless. She's very preoccupied with how useful she is to her dad, which can be a part of it, but is not the focus. And I feel like that is just because the author could not think of what it would be like to be violated like this. That's at least the impression I get. Anyway, she falls so flat. I wish, like, you could have just made Turtle a guy. You just make Turtle a boy, and then it would work. Why did she have to be a girl? I don't understand why Turtle had to be a girl, because she is, for all intents and purposes, acting like a boy, and not because she likes guns and bushes, which, side note, is what I titled this book in the server. This is the Guns and Bushes book. It's not because of that. It's because she just doesn't process things like a girl would who's been socialized a certain way. I hope that makes sense. I was just disappointed in this book. So it's going in the lowest category because of that. The next book is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, and that's going in the same category. I was having such bad luck with books. as you can see in this period. I wanted to actually find a book that depicted the father-daughter dynamic, the toxic kind, because I had the toxic mother-daughter dynamic. I wanted to have a complete collection in my favorites. I wanted the father-daughter version. So Ghostwall was suggested to me as one of that, and I thought it fell flat. And the reason is, I mean, Ghostwall is, I guess, more than just about the father-daughter thing. It's about freaking conservative doomsday prepper. Why was every toxic father in the books I picked up a doomsday prepper of some sort? But it's similar to My Absolute Darling in a sense that while I feel like the reaction to the father does read more like a girl who's been repeatedly abused, it's not really explained. I'm very interested in the finer details of the father's psychology because that is thoroughly explored in Bad Fruit. Well, it's the same problem as My Absolute Darling. It's just thrown in there and the reader just has to accept it at face value. And I didn't like it. And also the ending was so random. The characters just started acting weird out of the blue and I didn't understand why. So it didn't have me and I wasn't hooked and I didn't like it. The next book is Heart the Lover by Lily King. It's a hard one. I want to put it either in Soul Right or Vibes. I think I'm going to put it in Vibes, but low Vibes. Because it's not usually in my wheelhouse to read this type of book. So it's such a great book for that atmosphere of first love and thinking back. You know, this certain nostalgia that comes with it, at least in media. I never experienced this, but like how media portrays the nostalgia around first love, it does such a good job of doing that. It made me miss a youth that I didn't even experience like that. It's really good. It's such a touching book. And I understand why people would say it's sad. I personally think the ending was annoying, like, without trying to spoil things, it felt like a miscommunication trope to me. And that to me is annoying because there's a lot of suffering that comes from this inability to communicate, okay? But that means that if you can ignore that, which I am capable of, it's a beautiful book, a beautiful, nostalgic, tender book. I enjoyed it. I didn't cry, but I can acknowledge that it's really well written. The next book, however, is Loverboy by Antonia Wieseling, I think. I cannot read her author name. That's going also directly into Try Harder. This is a German book. It's marketed as dark romance or more like romantic suspense. And it's thematically about the Loverboy scam. So it's about a girl whose friend fell for the Loverboy scam, a la what Andrew Tate did with all those girls. So that's what this was about, and I thought it was so bad. The thing is, this is a German book. I'm not sure if it's translated, but chances are it will be. So the thing about German books like this, it's trying so very hard to be American. I feel like German media is trying and failing to adapt English-speaking vibes. And it's just sad because I wished that Germany would invent their own vibe. You know, the way that the French have invented their own vibe in media. Why is a lot of Germany trying to be marketable in the book talk sense like that? Because it fails. The language is just not meant for it. It sounds strange using the tropes that is in book talk. At least I think so. If I wanted a book talk book, I would read it in English. Granted, not everybody can read it in English, obviously. But I just wished that even for like thrillers, that German literature would stop trying to be something else. Invent your own vibe. Do something original. Jesus Christ. I will say that certain German thrillers are still pretty good. So this is romantic suspense / thriller. I will say that, like, for example, Andreas Eschbach, he has some good thrillers, high concept ones that I really enjoyed. I don't know if it's Eschbach who wrote the Jesus video. That was fun. And Herr aller Dinge is another one, Lord of all things. They're both translated into English. Those are great thrillers, German thrillers. This one is trying so hard to fit into the book talk niche, and it just doesn't work with the language or the culture because this is set in Germany and it's just not believable. This is not how German people act. Of course, I'm generalizing, but the vibe of the book is not freaking Berlin, okay? At least the way I know Germans, it's not. Okay, next book is another non-English book originally, which is Magma. It's an Icelandic book, and it's about a toxic relationship. Oh, but so well done. That's just the entirety of this book is about a girl falling for a narcissist. And by narcissist, I don't mean the commercial, the term that's being thrown around. I mean legit how narcissists act with the diagnosis, the psychological manifestation of narcissism. That is the narcissist in this book, and it's very well done. How the gaslighting works, how like this would work with somebody who has certain insecurities and all that. It was done so well and so thematically focused. Guys, there's not a lot of fluff. This is just about that, and it's done so well. I would put that. Oof, I feel like vibes is almost too low. I want to put it in diabolical, even though I don't think I gave it a full 5-star rating, but I'm going to put it in diabolical because this is a good representation to me. This is how I want toxic relationships to be depicted. Not, of course, you can add fluff around it, but what I mean is that with this realism, where I get a genuine peek into the character's head and what it's like, and I get to see this relationship happen, and I'm allowed to interpret how toxic it is, if that makes sense. Literary wise, this is so well done. So I can recommend it if you're into trauma literature, because this is pretty violent. So be warned. The next book is Blood by Toni Burrage. So I picked this book up because it centers around a sibling pair, a brother and a sister, as they make their way through life. I guess it's more that their emotionally unstable mother drags them all across Australia. The central thing is the bond between the two. The brother feels very protective of his younger sister. I have an interest in case it wasn't obvious, I have an interest in complicated family dynamics. It's a classic, I think. It's the type of book you would analyze in English class. So it does do its themes justice, but it's not dark enough for me. It's very slow paced, and I feel like there is skill in the prose, especially describing the scenery. It does give you a strong sense of setting, but plot-wise, it makes you work for the tense scene. So it's a more mellow book, but still very heavy, if that makes sense. So I'm putting that in Sol Right. It has the air of a Pulitzer-winning book, but just personally not entirely up my alley. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's, as you can see, not really a book that would tickle my fancies as such. The next book, however, girl, diabolical. That is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I did not expect to love this book this much. Holy shit. People have been telling me that I should pick this up because it's one of the Gothic masterpieces, or one of the originators of science fiction and fantasy, and just a cornerstone of Gothic. I don't think I need to sell you guys on what Frankenstein is. The thing is, it's such an ancient book that I thought it's going to be such a hard read. I have to get into it, blah, blah, blah. I listened to it, and the narration did wonders. I don't know. I'm going to probably read it too at some point because I do enjoy this story a lot. But it's exactly what I mean with Gothic literature. There is that dark romanticism about it. There is longing, just longing TM, not longing for a love. It's just there's a lot of yearning. A lot of Gothic yearning that I so enjoy, and I was hooked from the start. You know, the depiction of Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, is so trite compared to what he is in the book. He is a lot richer in the book, more multifaceted, or maybe that's going a little bit too far, but there's more nuance to him. There's more nuance to Frankenstein in the book. And even Adam, I think that's the official name for him. I just started calling him Adam because I think it was mentioned somewhere. But Adam, so the creature, even he longs with the full force of Gothic literature. And I love it so much. My little weird girl heart was tickled. Every inch of it was tickled by this book. That final monologue in the ending, I was just like, yes, please. Yes, God. It was so good. I loved it so much. So yes, one of my favorite reads. I can only recommend it. It's not as difficult as you think. Oof, just a few more, guys. The next one is Are You Awake by Sarah Courtesan, and that goes straight into try harder. So the premise of this book is that a girl finds out that her husband has an AI sex doll. And I thought it was so wonderfully camp. I'm like, oh my god, is this going to be a dissection of a marriage falling apart? Like, what implications does this have? Imagine you found your freaking guy hiding an AI sex doll and you've been married for like 10 years and you're like, what the fuck is this about? I thought it's going to be something campy, something quintessentially weird girl, lit fic. You know, it wasn't. I don't think this book knew what it wanted to be. I don't think this book knew what it wanted to say. Or maybe I'm just too dumb and I didn't pick up what it was putting down. It just went so contrary to all the expectations I had. And through, I feel like also what it was setting up. I don't think is it a big spoiler to say that that sex droid just didn't end up meaning anything? It just didn't mean anything. That's not what the story is about. Really bad. Would not recommend. So the next book is Love Can't Feed You. And this book is told from the perspective of a Filipino immigrant. I was expecting this to hit harder than it did. This turned out to be a book that is no plot, just vibes. And I was hooked maybe for the first third or so. And it just got less and less as I read along because I was not sure where this was heading. And I don't think it wanted to head anywhere. It was fine like that. But I kind of need more plot to be invested in what happens to the main character. So that's just going into, regrettably, into, wait, what was this about? If only it had more scaffolding around the themes, I think it would have gone either into vibes or soul right, but it didn't, so yeah. We have One Yellow Eye by Leigh Radford. Ooh, this book is vibes. This is a zombie apocalypse book, but actually it's about grief. And I thought it did it so well because the premise is toward the end of the outbreak, the main character's husband gets infected, and instead of killing him, she chains him to her radiator and keeps him alive because she's hell-bent in finding a cure. The main character is a doctor, so it's within the realm of possibility. And also, as the plot moves along, it is in the realm of possibility. And I thought the way it was handled to keep your loved one who is undead and the grief that surrounds that, the emotionality, it was portrayed so well. I was sympathizing a lot. And the female main character is, weird, sure, and distant and so focused on not feeling this grief that she's already feeling. It just hit with me. Not that I cried, but I could connect really well. And this book could have had a huge scale given that it's a zombie apocalypse, but it decided to be more or less close and intimate and deal with the emotionality of it all. And it's the first time I've encountered this type of fiction. I'm not quite sure if this is the only book out there, probably not, but it's the first time I've read this type of book and I enjoyed it. It took a classic horror setting, the zombie apocalypse, and made it do more. And I like that. So it's going into vibes. Oof. The next book is Yesteryear, and that's going into diabolical. I freaking love this book. Like Frankenstein, I wasn't expecting to like this book this much. And the primary reason is the perspective character, Natalie Heller-Mills. She is a grade A cunt, and I love her. She is so bitchy and so compelling and fascinating. I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't really dissect the plot as much, the external plot that is. I was so wrapped up in her characterization. I wanted to get to know her, and by the end of the book, I felt like I had a good grasp of her. Out of all the books I've read, I was missing this kind of representation of a bitchy, unlikable woman. It's the colder kind, the not so emotionally explosive kind, like in Bad Fruit, and the not so sexually driven kind, like in Tampa, or in this case, also not the so vulnerable kind, like in Magma. I was looking specifically for a cold, hard bitch, and I found one. I wasn't actively looking, to be fair, but I was yearning for it, and here we are. It's in Yesteryear. I love this book so much. I don't care what the haters say about it. Shh. It's a good book. I recommend it. The next book is Katabasis by R.F. Kuang, and I'm putting that regrettably into Soul Right. So I picked this up because somebody said this has a lot of commentary on academia, a lot of whining about academia. And I'm currently writing my thesis, and I was ripe for a book like this. And it delivered, at least in the first half, it delivered. It was witty, self-aware, self-flagellating commentary about how academia works and how terrible it is, and poking fun at it. It did read to me very similarly of what I imagine Dante's Inferno is. So it's in the spirit of Dante's Inferno in a sense that it's making fun of people. From what I've heard, I mean, I did listen to summaries of Dante's Inferno, that it's a lot of making fun of people that he knows. And that's what it read like in the beginning. They were going through the circles of hell, and then you would find random academics and they would react in a certain way that if you are in academia, you would know what it's referencing. So I was entertained. I was looking for the commentary in there. And then people who read this book know what I mean. At some point, midpoint, the book just takes a detour. And I was like, why? What is happening? Where did the commentary go? What is this book even about? Why is there a boss battle here with freaking people I do not give a shit about? You know? It was so disappointing. I don't know what Kwong was thinking. I don't know what moved her to just ditch the main plot and do something else. Like, I was just confused and disappointed. This could have been so good, I swear. If I were to tier rank the first half, it would be Vibes. Super funny, got a good few chuckles out of me. Everything else is so right. But the thing is, the ending ruined it too much for me. I didn't like the ending. I was so disappointed in it, both on a plotting level and on a technical level. With Love and Light, I think Kwong has a talent for commentary, witticisms, and all that, but I don't think she has a talent for tension. I don't think she knows how to write a tense scene. So that's why the ending fell flat for me. Moving on to the last book. I just finished this today, and it's A Dowry of Blood. The premise of this is about Dracula from the perspective of one of his brides, Constanta. So it's not really about Dracula the novel, but just her experience with him throughout the centuries. And this book is like marketed as more of a book talk book, but the premise sounded literary to me. I was like, ooh, interesting. Because it's told in second person. It's Constanta addressing Dracula throughout the book. And I thought, oh my God, like, why the fuck not? Like, this could be a primary example of the intersection of literary and commercial. This could be the kind of book that dances the line. It is not. I am putting this in try harder. I really didn't like it. I felt like, I think I got this recommendation from Reads by Rachel, and she was saying it was a lot about the toxic relationship and what it's like to be a victim of abuse and all that. Sure, that could be what the book was actually supposed to be about, but here's the thing. For all the times that Dracula is described as, what have you, seductive, powerful, but also abusive and temperamental, and essentially the book keeps on telling me that he's toxic. We never see it. We never witness the toxicity. A huge part of depicting an abusive, toxic dynamic is letting the reader see it. Okay? Like in Magma. I wouldn't say Magma is gratuitous at all, but it does hit harder if the reader is allowed to come to their own conclusions. This book doesn't let you do that. This book is a disappointingly telly book. And I understand there is an argument there because this is like, as I said, told in second person, so it's like letters, but there are still segments of dialogue where the reader is looking into the dynamic. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why you wouldn't show us the alleged toxicity of Dracula. Because by the end, I'm not buying it. It's I couldn't connect. I wanted this book to be literary so bad, but the characters are so obviously tropes to me that it just falls flat. You can write tropes. You can flesh them out, you know, you can write tropes. It doesn't mean that the characters then suddenly don't become human, but you have to flesh them out. The trope characters in this book barely have any meat to them. The whole story is playing like an anime in my imagination. It falls flat and the angst doesn't land because I'm like, what are you even angsty about? I mean, I believe that Dracula is toxic. I just wanted to see how. It's like, I feel like the author didn't have the imagination to actually depict a toxic interaction, or maybe they're oddly shy about it. Even though they want to write a book about a toxic dynamic, they don't want to show us the toxic dynamic, and I do not know why. It just makes it so flat. If you want to read a book about an actual toxic relationship, read Magma. It's a slim book. It's better at it. This, it read really like the author was just playing with dolls. I wanted it to become more literary, but it's commercial in the worst way. Oh, I just read this so my anger is fresh, but safe to say, I didn't like it. Holy shit. Those were all the books that I've read thus far. I hope you found something that you found interesting. You know what? I think this is a semi-normal distribution. I am heavy on the books that I don't like, which is interesting. That's just a risk you take, I guess. I want to read wide. That's the thing. I want to read a lot of genres. And yes, I know what I actually like, but I also want to check if I could like something else. If I could fall in love with something else. And things get me curious, and I'm often interested about things. And sometimes I have just books lying around and I just pick them up at random. This is fun to me. Even the ones that I don't like, even the books that I complain about are fun to me. But there are a few good ones in there, so it's not entirely negative. I am somewhat picky to give a book a full 5 stars. It really has to evoke a reaction with me. And if you read a lot of books, chances are most of them will fall in the average or a little bit below average. That's just a matter of statistics and the normal distribution, I guess. But yeah, those are all of the books, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!